Podcasting since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts radio network. kingofpodcasts.com.
Billboard finally does it.
The King of Podcasts radio network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Welcome to the program. This is King of Podcasts here with you with another Broadcasters Podcast. Built courtesy of kingofpodcasts.com. Of course, you can find all my other series. Find out where you can go ahead and download the shows. And if you want to go ahead and possibly donate to the program, there's a lot of ways to go and do that. It's a lot of ways to go and help out, a lot of ways to participate, and I hope you'll go ahead and consider that. So now here's the deal. Billboard has made changes to the recurrency rules of the Hot 100 charts. This has been a needed change for a long time. So specifically, we now have some more specific rules when it comes to when a song is considered recurrent and removed from the chart, which means a song, even though its popularity is still very prominent, we must show that the current charts are reflecting the pulse of the music industry with the newest music. Now, we already know through streaming, if you look at the Spotify Global 200 charts on a regular basis, or or the Apple Music charts, whatever there is, you can obviously tell. Because of the virality of places like TikTok and social media in general, there are always going to be songs that will return to the charts after a long time of not being up there. Or they're songs that never leave the charts. Because there's going to be still songs that are streamed and still be up there forever. I do a thing where I look at Billboard top songs. There's a YouTube channel that does a great job on this. And every week he puts out the Billboard Hot 100 and the Bubbling Songs charts in one video. He does the ones also for rock, for R&B, hip hop, for pop, and for Latin, among others. And then he does other ones where he'll do the Spotify Global 200 and the official charts 100 chart every week. And I'm telling you, the guy is great. It's nice, good, slick videos. And it's just a good way to go and figure out what the world is listening to in music. And in that Global 200 charts, there's always a number of songs that are up there that are amazingly staying on the charts because they're just there. The Killers, Mr. Brightside, Sweater Weather's The Neighborhood and the Sweater Weather, Vance Joy and Riptide, or if you look at Fleetwood Mac and Dreams or Radiohead's Creep, there's all these songs that have been around, and then others that will just make their way back up into the virality of the charts because they're being used in TikTok videos or whatever else. So Rihanna's Breaking Dishes. Think about all the songs that come up during Halloween or during Christmas time that always come back up and return to the charts. Those kind of things will continue here. But there's a change now in this. As I said, the change of the recurrency rule is to make the Hot 100 chart more reflective of current music consumption and allow newer songs a chance to climb. Because, sure, there's going to be songs in perpetuity, in infinity, that will continue to be very popular. Taylor Swift, Cruel Summer. There's all these different artists that have songs that will continuously be on the charts for as long as they want. All of Bad Bunny's music from the start of the year continues to be up there because. And there's other songs that have been in the same vein here that needed to go and change. So the official changes are now, if you have a song that's been on the chart after 78 weeks, if it's dropped below number 5, it goes recurrent. Below number 10, after 52 weeks or 1 year. Below number 25 after 26 weeks. Below number 50 after 20 weeks. So now, if you had a song that dropped below a low position like number 50, the new rules now have lower thresholds for removal at earlier points in a song's chart life. So we're not going to have songs that will go 100 weeks and never drop off the chart. Now, some of the things they've done here have been the constant ongoing changes to the chart methodology that constantly happens. July of 2020, they got rid of the practice of counting albums or singles bundled with merchandise or concert tickets on its charts and the Hot 100. So the BTS kind of deal was stopping that. Fan packs, being a limited exception to the bundling rule for album charts, but with new safeguards. Physical and digital bundles, sales of a physical album or a single bundle with an instant digital download are no longer counted as digital sales immediately. This is not all the changes that are necessary, but this is a good, this for them, for Billboard, they have to play every industry nice. So streaming, radio, records, they all have to play ball with them. So this is a change that could be mediable, pliable, and make sense. Because they're not going to put priority on streaming yet over radio and records. They're just not going to do that. Radio, for radio airplay, records for record sales. Because that's the metrics by which radio and records are their livelihood. To be able to go ahead and have airplay. Music, for them, yeah, they think the advertisements are important, but on the music radio stations, they may be a little bit kind of sort of, they have to go and worry about the music they're playing. So it's important because the methodology still holds up for radio records to be conceivably important metrics towards the score that is given to songs every week. Now, when I asked I asked the AI because I was just trying to get the information to research out. After the new stricter recurrent rules, this immediately affected the chart week ending October 25th, 2025. So now the songs that dropped off as a result of this, 2 songs that went after 78 weeks were Lose Control by Teddy Swims, Benson Boone, Beautiful Things, 112 weeks for Lose Control, 89 weeks for Beautiful Things. Die With a Smile also drops off because it dropped below number 10 after 52 weeks. Die With a Smile, Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars, is now out. Luther with Kendrick Lamar and SZA dropped after 30 plus weeks with a number of new rules implied. Let's put this in play as well. We have to thank Taylor Swift for this because The Life of a Showgirl essentially took several songs, took them right off the charts. So Lose Control, Beautiful Things, Die With a Smile, those songs are out because they're not going to stay up in the top 10 anymore. Thanks to Taylor Swift and the old recurring rules, those songs will still find a way to get back in, no matter what. And that's the stagnation of the music industry. What used to be not so much of a problem is because we had new music out there consistently fresh and new that would replace these other songs. You would have artists that would have new music to come up after that. And don't get me wrong, Teddy Swims and Benson Boone have had other songs after that. But the problem is their forthcoming singles have not panned out. They have not been able to go ahead and surpass or even match the amount of popularity that Lose Control and Beautiful Things respectively had. So Taylor Swift could have her album right now, and there's still songs that are still now surmounting the top 10. But when those songs would die out, because not all those songs are going to get radio airplay, some will still get sales, but eventually the sales will die down after probably somewhere at the end of the year. And then these other songs will find their way back up. Or also when Christmas music comes around, the same thing will happen. You'll have certain songs like those that will continue to be up here. So other songs that also dropped off, Shabuzi's a bar song, which needed to be. Like that's well over a year, and it's already dropped below number 25 after 26 weeks, so out. And Morgan Wallen had various songs that also dropped off from his last album, I'm the Problem. So that's good too. It's important to see that. Now, in that point, the changes to the chart ultimately made changes overall to everything on the chart. Because now we have a fresher chart out there. Now, you're still going to see Taylor Swift now occupying 7 of the top 10 songs on this particular chart. But the difference is now is that, okay, Alex Warden Ordinary is still on the chart 36 weeks later. Not much can be done about it. It's just still going to be there. And Golden by Huntrix from the K-pop Demon Hunter soundtrack continues to be there as well. But there are other songs outside of the Taylor Swift album bomb that are sticking around. So there are some. Daisies and Justin Bieber has only been around for 14 weeks. That's sitting outside. Man I Need by Olivia Dean got as high as number 12 before the album bomb, and now she's at 17 right now. But still, after Taylor Swift, some of these songs will have a chance to go move up. And Olivia Dean's Man I Need has been on the chart for 8 weeks. Leon Thomas and Mutt is still sitting outside. 37 weeks it's been on the chart, lingering around in the bottom half of in the top half of the top 20. Number 11 is its highest peak so far. Then you have a few more K-pop Demon Hunter songs to round out the top 20. And there are other songs that might make their way up, but now there's room for other songs to make their way up, unlike what you would imagine. And Billboard has talked about what they could have that could be making their way up the charts overall. And they asked the question, who are the contenders that could be filling incoming vacancies in the top 10? And they first of all went into Olivia Dean with Man I Need, because right now her new album, Art of Loving, not only debuted atop the official UK albums chart in the top 10 and in the top 10 of the Billboard 200, but also just going and continuing to have her songs that are making her way up. She's already had 3 songs now that are singles on the Billboard chart and a bunch of others on the official chart because of where she's from. We talked about Leon Thomas and Mutt, been just outside of the top 10 for months. But after Taylor Swift's album bomb subsides, this song could break out and still make its way up. At the moment, it's still holding up in radio airplay, number 3 on the radio songs chart, and still getting a radio airplay of almost 60 million spins overall. So if it can stick around for another month, Leon Thomas and Mutt can make it into the top 10 in these new rules in the new age, which is fresh. I mean, it's still radio airplay. That's the stagnation of radio because they don't have a lot of new songs that they put up there on a regular basis, and that's a problem. So we have to wait. Kalani Unfolded has been sitting outside the top 20, got to number 21, and got up to number 18, but still radio's starting to pick up on it, and radio airplay is starting to pick up. So there's a chance for that. And then Tame Impala's Dracula off a new album that they just put out, that maybe there's something that will happen with that song to make its way up because it's now made it into the top 60 and it's working its way up. But now the new album is out and the new album's going to be kicking in. That will help to boost up potential rising of that song on the chart. So you can see some new artists coming into play, which would be nice. But now one of the things that we have to talk about is that when we've seen significant changes of the rules of the chart, the Billboard Hot 100, we have to understand the significance of how it prioritizes radio and records initially, because that's what's always been considered records initially in 1955. But then you see with radio airplay coming in, jukeboxes and things like that, jukeboxes were actually the other metrics that we used to have back in the day, which would give you an idea of what music was popular that could be considered in the methodology of the charts. But then jukeboxes went passé. Streaming has basically become the new jukebox, but now on a more personalized level. And because the amount of metrics that you can get off of that, and how songs can be viral and the accessibility of songs you can get to makes a bigger difference as well. So now, this standard record chart, published weekly by Billboard magazine, has to play to the radio industry for whatever reason. Because in the process for the record and radio industries, they play with each other. For the record company, they want to be able to sell albums in the areas that they might have streaming or might have sales for whatever. They have to go along with the streaming end of YouTube or Spotify or Pandora or Apple to get whatever kind of revenue or residuals they can get off of that. But then the real money they're still trying to get in as well is that if they can get radio to still be there, even though it's such a secondary model. But radio gives longevity to particular singles that will continue to push the singles out there to keep streaming and thus keep the albums to be sold. That's that concept. It's not a great concept anymore because the change of streaming, really, the digital disruption changed everything. But what we need is what kind of happened in 1991. We need a real significant change to how things happened. Because November 30th of 1991, we had one of the most significant changes overall. When Billboard magazine revitalized the chart to accurately track purchased singles and radio airplay. So getting retail stores to be able to go ahead and send their sales information of cassettes, CDs, and vinyl, they were able to get a better idea of the sales to go along with radio airplay. Now, the original chart did have airplay sales and jukebox play. Jukebox play discontinued in 1957. And of course, in 1991, they made this change for a number of reasons. One was the fact that they said that airplay playlists were not very accurate and songs could be misrepresented in their rankings. And retail stores could play favorites for certain artists and singles, sometimes with incentive from record labels. So payola was in play across the board. But, if a record company was willing to go and invest money on the hush to a record store or to a radio station, then that tells you they had real momentum behind it. And that they were willing to go put their money where their mouth is, then they knew they had a hit on their hands, or they were going to do whatever it takes to make that happen. But yes, airplay and sales might have been inflated, and you might have gotten a little bit of a less interpretation. It was an honor system, and the accuracy of the data might not have been perfect. But what would be the cream of the crop that would rise to the top, that would be determined on that chart. So I didn't have a lot of trust in that chart and the way it was set before. Plus, in the way that was set, you had a lot of things that changed when it came to what music was out there. Because the other thing that also changed on this chart was they were trying to go ahead and avoid what was happening in the 90s, where we were getting new formats. So pop music or urban music were now being segmented. Because then, we didn't have soul music so much anymore. We had hip hop with R&B. In the 90s, it was starting to change. And hip hop just started coming to the forefront, and radio wasn't completely behind it yet. Major market stations in metropolitan areas, sure. But it wasn't all the way there. And it took a while for certain stations to finally go ahead and let it take off as its own self-sustaining format. And that's what changed. But they wanted to make sure that there were certain songs that could not make it onto the chart. And, there was also a change that happened with the America Top 40 Countdown. At the same time of this change, they decided to go ahead and decided to go to a different chart and not use. They would use the chart methodology change as the excuse to change the charts altogether. And so I want to listen to Shadoe Stevens and his chart from, November 8th or November 11th, 1991. They went ahead and made the change that the Billboard Hot 100 was not their gauge of the chart they would use to count down the songs. And they would forever change. So hip hop took a backseat. Rock music took a bit more of a backseat, because then alternatives changed things, hip hop changed things. So your normal rock and soul, those formats were becoming significantly different. And the new modernization of those formats changed everything. When you didn't have just a modern rock station, you had alternative. It was a different story, different feel to it. But then after years, they would all be put into the same spot. It'll still be considered. And there have been changes that were made all over the place where you had things that were still needing to be added. Because the change of the times, you'd have songs on a movie soundtrack that were not released as singles, and they would never be on the Billboard Hot 100. They would be on an airplay chart, but they would never be considered on the Hot 100. So those things have all changed around over the last 34 years. But now we're at the point where those changes were made, and the current list now is at a better place, but still, after everything's done, recurrency rules will change. In the same time, November 30th, 1991, there would be a new chart, the recurrency singles chart. So recurrent status would have singles falling off the Hot 100 chart, and the songs we put in the recurrent status. And at that time, we had 30 positions on that chart. And in the rules of that chart methodology back in 1981, it was a 20-week recurrent rule. Songs that went below the top 20 after 20 weeks went to recurrent status. Then those singles were removed from the chart, and rising songs had a chance to move up as other older songs rebounded and spent more time in the top 20. And then the rules kept changing. The sliding scale would start to begin. You'd have then the 20-40 rule, the top 20 after 40 weeks, and then after 50, and it stayed after 50 weeks. So it's still been, until now, 20 weeks, and it doesn't go below the top 50, a song would still stay in the active chart and not go to recurring. It's a very important thing. But radio was taking advantage of the fact that with that 20-50 rule, there were songs that could stay on the chart, still with radio airplay, have a relevance. And for the music industry, they didn't have to go ahead and churn out so much music. They didn't have to put so many artists, and then also just the longevity of the music they had out there, albums, singles, they could go as long as they want. But streaming changed everything. Changed it all. My whole point of this is that no matter what, radio and records are still not bringing us new music. We have had new music this year from some really formidable artists. A couple weeks ago, we talked about it, and they all went flat. But that's also because of the fact that you had also folks that were putting out albums that waited a long time to do that. I mean, you're telling me there was no pressure from Cardi B's camp in Atlantic to wait 7 years for her new album to come out? Was there a reason that Sabrina Carpenter's new album had to go and come out, a year later, roughly? Or for Taylor Swift to have an album out immediately, after Torture Post Department and come back out after that. Like, some of the decisions to go too quickly or to wait so long were just big stories. And nobody really talked about that either and what that meant. But at the moment, radio doesn't matter because there's not even the people that are out there that are tastemakers that are out there to go ahead and talk about the charts. That's all gone too. Because the people that will be in radio that could be championing music are gone. One of the folks that was out from iHeartRadio in recent layoffs right now, Katie Summers. And I want to play a clip from Bubba the Love Sponge and his podcast where he went pretty extensively about this. And I thought this would be something to go and bring up here and go through because I think, I've talked about him before. And of course, he's out of the radio business altogether, but still, there's a lot that can be said about this. Now, I'm going to go play back what he said here because he's spitting facts for the most part on the radio industry, and I think he's absolutely right about it. So let's go and play some of this back.
Summers. But when Katie Summers, for 93.3 FLZ, the first radio station that I worked at in Tampa, Florida, one that's very dear to my heart, the Power Pig, she's been doing middays for 20-plus years. She also was towing the corporate line by voice tracking middays in what, Seth, maybe 50 markets?
A ton. I mean, if you've survived iHeart, over the last however many years of them letting people go, they've let program directors go. They've let midday shows go. I mean, they've let everybody go.
They let Hartley Atkins, who was the president of all radio markets. Think about that. You only report to one person, and that would be Bob. Is it Bob Eatman? Bob, I don't know, whoever the CEO is, who, by the way, just re-signed a contract at $15.5 million, at 29. Let me look at Bob Eatman from iHeart's new deal. So Hartley Atkins started as a sales person, just a lonely sales guy. Fresh-faced kid out of Gainesville. When I was at the Power Pig, him and Desiree and Bobby and LT and Jim Beard. They were all, the sales staff. Hartley Atkins worked his way up the iHeart corporate ladder to be the president, based out of Washington, D.C. He went up after Tampa and ran the D.C. market as a market manager, continued to climb corporately, and then made his way up to the president of all markets. You can't. You're second in charge at that time. Third in charge, because they got this little bozo duo named Bob Eatman, and there's two dudes.
Bob Pittman.
And
Rich
Bresler. And Rich Bresler. They pretty much have bamboozled and hoodwinked whoever owns iHeart for however long to continue to make these cuts. And Lummy, will you tell me what?
Now, there's more to what he said, but even I have had to go ahead and kind of take myself back with Bob Pittman because of the fact that, he's a CEO that's done things where on the podcasting side, yes, he has made inroads, but he was never going to fix the radio side. We just need to make ourselves clear about that. These cuts and these constant changes now with radio, even I have to be a little bit more grounded on the fact that he can't fix this. Like iHeartRadio is not supposed to be the answer for them to go and hold on to all the radio stations that they have and to service the public with the music that's out there on the radio. Because all these pop stations that would be, back in the day, would be reliant on what the Billboard Hot 100 said. And all you have to do is just go and put the songs out that are on that chart. It will be easy. Because in those days, 30 years ago, the Billboard Hot 100 would be the gauge of songs that radio stations would be playing. Their music would basically be the playlist for those radio stations. And that would be the catalyst of the record sales that were going on and the airplay of radio. So you would know the pulse of the music industry because radio was part of it. But they're not anymore. Because radio is controlled by another entity that is private equity. Like the real enemy of radio is private equity. But they are vultures to every business. That's clear to me now, too. I don't know. I guess with some of these radio folks like Michael Harrison or Perry Michael Simon, I guess there's something where in the radio business that I've been following from somewhat the outside in because I wasn't really involved or integral to the actual processes. It's just everything is me as a spectator enjoying radio as I loved, and now being completely feeling like I'm being isolated in my opinion about it because no one's talking about radio. Again, that video right there, the Bubba the Love Sponge put out there, it only had 600 views so far. I'm one of the few people that did because YouTube put it out there as a recommendation. I'm glad they did. But it's significant because there were certain people, when he's talking about Tampa, Florida, and WFLZ, one of the most prominent radio stations going back 36 years. Because he's talking about Power Pick, that was 1989. And the thing was that station was a trendsetter at a time when pop radio was in a real lull because the music was stagnant because we had a lot of established artists that did not resonate right into the 90s. The 90s were just a big change of music. And WFLZ was very good as a pop station to follow along with the trends that are out there. So when freestyle music or alternative music or hip hop was coming in, they actually were playing it because they didn't want to be beholden to the fact that, okay, we don't have a lot of songs from Prince or Michael Jackson or whatever. Like we had albums, we had songs, but like the amount of pop stars that were out there, the British invasion had kind of subsided. A lot more dance music was coming out and WFLZ would play it. But like there were just certain music genres within pop that would make the pop charts that a lot of radio stations didn't want to play. They don't want to play dance, nothing from Europe, none of the house music. They don't want to be a part of Latin freestyle that became into play that was kind of like the post-disco era. They don't want to play alternative music, which was not your conventional rock. I mean, because it's a big change from hair bands to the alternative grunge sound that we're getting into, and then more into that. It's like it was all changing because the culture of pop music was changing. It wasn't It wasn't teeny boppers. It wasn't boy bands. It wasn't idols like that. It was just no teen idols, nothing like that. It's just a different change. It was a real diverse portfolio of artists in the late 80s, early 90s. Just completely changed. And radio could handle it because you have some of these outlier stations that were owned by some significant companies. But then, of course, deregulation changed everything. When I think of stations like Q102 in Philadelphia, Power 106 in Los Angeles, 106 KMEL in San Francisco, Power 96 in Miami, or Hot 105 in Miami, 102 Jams in Orlando, Power Pig in Tampa, WLOL in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Power 92 in Phoenix, Arizona. These stations were all changing things up, and they were kind of following on that same idea where they were being enterprise. They identified popular music, as top 40 music. They were still acting as top 40. And then it would be considered top 40 rhythmic because they did lean into the music that was much more rhythmic with much more dance-oriented music. But then some of those stations also still played alternative as well. So some of those stations kind of like played into the whole mix of everything because they wanted to be the pulse of the younger audience. And they didn't want to be pigeonholed to like making mainstream music just be homogenized, which it is today. Because now we have so many different formats of stations that are just not the same anymore. The radio stations are not catering to younger listeners. They're just not. Streaming is. But radio could still be a consideration. There's something to be said about streaming as a first line of exposure for artists. But again, that longevity of having an artist that has a song that does so well, and then finally the mainstream gets caught up on it. So radio could be that catalyst. But then the radio could also break new artists like it's done for years. But that's not happening either because there's nobody there allowed to go ahead and do that now on radio. That's a lost cause. There are some stations on public radio, but that's not enough. Plus, they also have their own interest. Like there would be something where the music industry would actually be involved. Like, remember, stations like KRCW and others like that in like Austin, Texas or Seattle, Washington. Their thing is they don't have these big major record companies that are putting out artists that might be industry plants or might be these artists that will be big major stars. They're not putting those up and coming artists over there. These are all independent record labels that are getting involved to get their artists anywhere, or an artist that just starts to get out there themselves. But it's not meant for a mainstream consumption. That's not their intent. But radio, that's supposed to be what they are, but they're not. Something's changed about that. There's a number of things that came out of the National Association of Broadcasters radio show that's going on right now. And we should talk about that. Their show in New York has been going on this week. And there are a few things that have come out of that. Number one, a story that's coming out about data revealing the public concern of AI and journalism integrity. We'll take this real quickly. There was a panel titled The Future of News, AI, New Revenues and Risks, the Policy Response. And there was research conducted by On Message Incorporated that showed that 76% of Americans are concerned about AI reproducing journalism and local news stories without permission, 51% very concerned, and a strong majority supporting government action, 77% favoring a law prohibiting AI from copying news content without compensation, and 59% strongly supporting such legislation. That's one story that came out of that. The AI audio use, how AI is being used in audio now, also talked about at the NAB show. So broadcasters and podcasters are expecting to fast track at a rapid pace using AI for a variety of use cases, from streamlining operations doing show prep to analyzing listener data and optimizing ad performance in real time. I know for myself, I do quite a bit of show prep with AI, where I'm gathering all my materials that I'm going to talk about. And instead of me putting out an outline like you used to and writing out an outline, or actually just writing out the whole description of the show and kind of like where talking points are that I'm going to go and bring up, AI can help me organize it. So it's like an assistant, but I don't want to use it more than anything than that right now. Bonneville International's Vice President of Podcasting, Cheryl Worsley, says the technology has improved by leaps and bounds. The rate at which it gets great is going to accelerate even more and means we will use it more. She says that AI can help them get the most out of their hosts. Quote, if your talent is wanting to do something like a podcast, look for the efficiencies in their day that you can glean from AI so they can produce more original content. They also talk about that news reporters can free themselves up to do more original reporting using tools like Opus Clip to create social media posts for their stories. And folks at SoundStack, their VP of Sales and Business Development, Matt Kellogg, says that AI will allow radio stations to save as much as 40% on production costs, which takes away talent, which takes away staff. But that's not a good thing. But that's like every other business. If you want to keep working and not let AI take over your jobs, you need to be part of the human input. Journalists need to go ahead and change who they are and identify who they're going to be. Things like that. And another story that was coming out of the NAB show. There was a NAB show New York panel devoted to mergers and acquisitions. And Khalil and Company Executive Vice President Todd Hartman discussed what he sees ahead for the radio industry over the next 12 to 18 months. Now, keep this in mind. What he's saying is that there's going to be a big fire sale for radio stations coming up. A radio deal market is going to heat up next year. And that is all because of the relaxing of decades-old station ownership limits. Remember, I've been talking about this for over 6 months, back in March. And now we're coming to fruition. This is what's going to happen. More stations are going to get bought up. That's not going to be good for the sake of radio for the general public, just to say it like that. So Todd Hartman says, I think we're going to see continued announcements where you see the recent acquisition of Alpha Media and a subsequent purchase of Bonneville San Francisco cluster. Quote, you're going to see some more activity through the remainder of this year, and then obviously 2026 could be a big year. It's depending on when those changes are going to happen. The SEC in late September voted to consider relaxing, so they're going to go into the process looking at it. And relaxed ownership rules would likely spur some rearranging of the chessboard in local markets. Owners would bulk up their assets or divest in one market to expand in one another. They're going to just add more to it. If they can get away with it, they will. This is not going to make more stations go to everybody else, but that's what's going to happen. When they talk about some people hoping that deregulation would provide private equity a reason to go ahead and facilitate coming back to radio, Hartman says he's not so sure. He thinks that buyers will lean on relationships built over the years with the local regional banks to get access to capital for acquisitions. Quote, radio is still a great business. If you buy it right, you layer the proper amount of debt on it, radio can be a great cash-on-cash annuity business. And when it comes to local television, he thinks the local TV business will surpass $8 billion in transactions next year to maybe $8.5 to $10 billion. Audacy, Audacy, I hate the name of that company. They released a State of Audio, the Creator Effect, a report saying that radio is very important to helping to grow the creator economy. So they're saying that in the study that was conducted earlier this year, a third of music format listeners feel more connected to their community because of their local radio host. 8 in 10 are tuning in specifically to hear their favorite host. And 7 in 10 agree that they value radio stations for local hosts who share local experiences. Well, I guess maybe that's happening on Odyssey, but not on iHeartRadio. But again, Odyssey is the same ones that had national hosts for their content until that kind of failed and they had to go and do a little revisiting that subject. Let's just say it like that. In their report, they are important to highlight the importance of authenticity over everything when it comes to content. Quote, audiences aren't looking for polish anymore. They're craving real. Not only does it generally feel good to connect, it also makes it become make or break for creators. Your listeners can snuff out the dupes, and hosts will pay a price for the ultimate crime, fake and phony. By the way, on my Podcasters Row series, I'm going to be doing some work where I won't have any other guests on necessarily for a little bit. I'm going to table that for a little while. I'm going to do a little more education on that channel because I'm going to start giving out some real secrets and all that I'm doing right now in the field as I produce and edit and host content over on the radio networks that I work on, which is WMR.FM and Cannabis Radio. I'm going to give away some secrets that I've been using that will help apply also to the clients I'm talking to. But it's not like I'm going to give away the whole secret recipe. It's the fact of the matter is that there are certain things you should know in rules when it comes to podcasting to make yourself a better podcaster. And so there are a number of tenets that you should do to be a professional podcaster. And I'm going to start sharing those detailed fundamentals on the program in forthcoming episodes. So if you have not subscribed to Podcaster Show, please do so. And I hope you'll go and look at it, because I'll start doing those coming very soon. A lot of great information I've been putting together because I've been doing a lot of work with new clients. And some of the work we do, some of our clients have been much more asking for input, asking for more information, more on their content, so they could really do something with what they're doing. And so I get it. It's a little bit overkill, but it has made me work harder. And the input that I have, and the help of AI, let's make that very clear as well, have helped me to go ahead and become a better podcaster, to learn that I need to go ahead and do some more things with the hosts to make them better hosts. And it's one thing for how I need to sound and how I need to go and project myself and present a show in monologue form or interview format. But it's also the same thing I have to do when I have to go and coach and train hundreds of clients every year. And I've done it for 20 years plus. It's a lot of work. Two other stories I want to bring up for tonight. TechCrunch putting out a story about YouTube and the fact that they've paid out $8 billion to the music industry in 12 months. So now we know how much, I think it was like $4 billion that Spotify has spent in the last year or so to the music industry. Well, YouTube could surpass that. Between 2024 and 2025 of July, $8 billion have been paid to the music industry. Now, that's a big payout compared to the fact that it was $6 billion in 2022. And a year before that, YouTube had paid out $4 billion to the industry in the last 12 months. Oh, excuse me. Spotify paid out $10 billion to the music industry in 2024. And the year before, $9 billion. It's a lot of money coming out for these companies. So that's why streaming and YouTube is so important. Integral. YouTube has, it says, according to their platform, 125 million music and premium subscribers globally, including users on trials, and 2 billion logged in viewers who watch music videos each month. That's a big deal right there. YouTube is available in more than 100 countries and supports 80 languages. And we've heard this story before, but I figured I'd go and bring this up once again. Gen Z, making it clear the kind of content that they're more interested in. The Teens and Screens survey. Well, I guess they went back and did this again. And UCLA's Center for Scholars and Storytellers putting out this report once again. 1,500 Americans between the ages of 10 and 24 asked about their media consumption habits and preferences. And they were reflecting more of the Gen Z population between August 13th and August 25th. They were reflective of the population in terms of racial, ethnic, gender, sexual, ability, economic, and geographic diversity. According to the study, 53% of young Americans discuss movie and TV shows with friends more than they discuss content they watch on social media. Interesting. So it's still very important. Gen Z prefers more animation. Matter of fact, I'm going to go see Chainsaw Man this weekend. I'm still getting that anime bug because, I see the interest of the younger audience out there going to anime movies. Like I said, when I saw Demon Slayer, wow, what a crowd they got for that. What can I say? So animated content over live action rose from last year 43% now to 48.5%. And that's not just the younger teens. 19 to 24-year-olds, nearly 48% prefer animation over live action. And when it came to the preferred kind of content that respondents would choose to watch with their friends, movies ahead of video games and concerts. Teens said they would rather go see a new movie in theaters. And that's the second time in a row they've actually gotten that kind of response. And also the same demographic looked about things about stories with friendships. That they want to see more content with essential relationships or friendships. And more portrayals of characters who aren't interested in romantic relationships at that point in time. So they don't want sexual or romantic relationships. They just want situationships or friendships. More than anything else. Healthy conflict resolution they want to see more of. Romance ranked third to last on a list of topics youth want to see explored on screen. 60% plus say they wanted to see romantic relationships depicted more as about the friendship between the couple than sex. 48% said that there's too much sex and sexual content in TV or movies. I disagree with that. There's not enough. Toxic relationships and love triangles are among the most tiresome or uninteresting tropes for young viewers. So the kind of movies that we would have seen you could ever remake again or ever try to put that back out there, where the boys are in 1960s, Porky's in the 80s, American Pie in 1999, or Superbad in 2007. Raunchy sex comedies? No, they don't want that. Nothing like that. So the kids are a little bit neutral on things. They don't want anything that's overly crazy and all. That's fine, I guess. That's what they want to do. But it also would be considering the fact that if there was better movies that were sex related, or more raunchy films, or more of those movies that just had a little more depravity and debauchery to go with the name of one of my shows. They could do more of that, but they're not. Better content would get kids into movies anyways. But the movie theaters, the movie studios just got to do better stuff and quit doing retreads and rehashes. Come back next week with the Broadcasters Podcast. Remember, content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.